very much for the introduction, Pete. As was introduced, my name is Beth Parker, and I'm the Urban Nature Project Manager for Neath Port Talbot Council. So we're here today to talk to you about the Nature Recovery Action Plan response, specifically in terms of urban nature and specifically in terms of Neath Port Talbot and what we're doing in our local authority to improve the recovery of urban nature. We are currently funded, or I am currently funded, and my team by a grant called the Nature Towns and Cities Initiative, which is a lottery, National Trust, and Natural England grant scheme. Our project is called Nature's Back in Town, and we're specifically looking at urban nature recovery in Neath Port Talbot with a focus on Port Talbot, as it's one of our more urbanised areas. So I'm going to hand over to Rose to talk you through the Nature Recovery Action Plan more broadly and in terms of Neath Port Talbot, and then I'll come back towards the end to talk about the urban response. So Rose, over to you.
Yep. Are you okay to flick through for me?
I can just say whenever you want me to.
Thank you. Yeah, I won't go too much into this, but yeah, so Pete did mention part of my role. I'm the Section 6 officer, so like looking after making sure that we as a council meet our biodiversity duty, and part of that is supporting the local nature partnership to produce our local nature recovery action plan. So I won't go into too much detail on this because obviously most of you will probably already know it, but obviously the National Nature Recovery Action Plan is our Welsh framework for nature recovery action, and it's a response to the State of Natural Resources report. Government have just produced a new nature recovery action plan as well, so that's all been updated, and it provides these 6 strategic aims for nature recovery. Next one, please, Beth. So yeah, the state of natural resources in Wales, again, I'm sure all of you are aware of this, but the figures are quite stark, and this is why we're all doing it. So there's almost 1 out of 5 species are at risk of extinction. We're already seeing the effects of climate change. I mean, the butterflies are loving it right now, but you know, there are going to be a lot of pressures on our species and ecosystems as a result of climate change. Our water bodies are in trouble. Overall, most of our ecosystems are lacking in resilience. So, and that doesn't help with things like climate change, putting more pressure on these ecosystems, which are less resilient. So, we're going to have more issues than we're already seeing. And all of these habitats are affected by habitat fragmentation and bad quality, problems across the board. Okay, next one, Beth. So the Local Nature Partnership, in response to the National State of Natural Resources SONAR report, created its own State of Nature report for Neath Port Talbot. So we looked at habitats grouped into 11 broad habitat types, and we did an assessment of them based on the DECA framework. So we looked at the diversity, extent, condition, connectivity, and made an assessment of the resilience of each type of habitat, and we had a score then through from poor up to excellent. You can see at the top of the list there, only 2 actually reached good, so that nothing got to excellent. So we've only got 2 in good ecological resilience, and that's woodlands and open mosaic habitats. But that's with huge caveats because those good habitats have got huge threats looming over them. So we've obviously got Neath Port Talbot is one of the invasive non-native species capitals of Wales, I think, with balsam and knotweed and a myriad of others. And the problem for the open mosaic habitats then, which are probably the most species diverse habitats in the county, they're all threatened with development. They're all old development pads that are just waiting for someone to come along and want to develop on them again. So that's a huge threat. We are seeing climate change effects already in the county. There's, some of them are good. So we're seeing an explosion of bee orchids this year, for example. But there's going to be things that struggle as a result of climate change as well. And we are sort of waiting to see what that's going to be. But yeah, so some of the good parts, NPT supports over 70 species of key significance in Wales. And we also have some of the rarest wildlife in Wales is just in Neath Port Talbot. For example, the fen raft spider. You can only find that in Pantersize Fen, the Tennant Canal, that sort of area on the border with Swansea. That's the only place you'll find it in Wales. We've got the blue ground beetle that's in the photo there. That's the only population in Wales as well, is in Skewen, in Dyffryn Woods and the surrounding areas. And we've got ox-tongue broom rape, which is along the old, along the grasslands, going past Tartar, Steel. So lots of rare species that you perhaps won't find anywhere else in Wales. Next, please, Beth. So based on that state of nature report, then we produced our own nature recovery action plan, which is the local framework for nature recovery action. So it does align with the national plan, but it is more targeted for our local priorities and based on that state of nature and where we think the problems are and what needs doing. And that was the end of my bit. That's where Beth comes in.
Yeah, so now on to me. More specifically, in the national NRAP, we've focused on, if we're focusing on urban nature, we're looking at the things that the NRAP is suggesting for recovering urban nature. So urban environmental quality and health. So that's a focus on increasing green space, tree cover, but to do those things to improve physical health, mental well-being, as well as the health aspects such as pollution, and the urban heat island effect. Urban biodiversity features on the government estate, so enhancing large government sites with wildlife-friendly features, green infrastructure features, and other aspects. Planning policy Wales, which is one of the bigger aspects, which is green infrastructure in communities. So it's embedding green infrastructure into planning, ensuring that biodiversity is not only unaffected by development, but also improved by development, and then also embedding these policies into things like active travel and other aspects. Then we've got urban community woodlands and planting. So this is through funding scapes like the National Forest for Wales scheme, community woodland scheme, lots of other smaller projects to improve urban tree planting. Sustainable urban drainage is a big focus. So looking at solving surface water flooding through more nature-based solutions. The Local Places for Nature grant, which supports lots of local authority actions for nature and having an urban focus towards this, supporting urban communities to create accessible wildlife spaces. Flower-rich habitats in towns and cities. So this is again a push for things like the Bee Friendly scheme to deliver more natural grass verges and things like that, which have more native wildflowers for pollinators. And then finally embedding nature-based transport infrastructure. So a focus on any new transport infrastructure in Wales having nature-based aspects to the design and delivery of it. And then talking about the state of urban nature in Neath Port Talbot, as Rose mentioned, on the wider scale, we don't have any excellent habitats and only 2 are good. The urban nature as a habitat is assessed as fair. It does support 13 priority species, which is the good thing. It has an amber resilience to climate change and the nature emergency, often facing issues such as heat island effects and also lots of surface water flooding issues. It's not often managed with biodiversity in mind. So you can see the image on the left is Victoria Gardens in Neath. It's a really lovely park, but it's not necessarily in those spaces managed with a biodiversity aspect in mind, with amenity grassland and annual planting. And so we're looking at an overall review of these spaces to add some more biodiversity managed aspects. And we have been improving and doing these across the whole of the authority. And then generally, habitat loss and a lack of connectivity are the biggest issues. So in our urban spaces, roads, fences, lots of concreted spaces cause a massive lack of connectivity. So what are we doing about this in Neath Port Talbot? So here are some of the actions for urban nature recovery. So as I mentioned, connectivity is a big issue. So we're looking at increasing connectivity, reducing barriers such as roads and fences in urban communities to protect species like hedgehogs, improving spaces for pollinators so that there's islands, working on projects such as the bee line with bug life and things like that. The swift recovery project, so improving spaces for swift. You might see a couple of swift towers having popped up across the authority, as well as looking at adding nest boxes as the swifts species of swift are in decline. The MPT Bee Friendly project, so that's improving meadow management and bee friendly streets as well. This is particularly focused on urban spaces, urban gardening, and things like that. MPT for Nature, which you may have seen events advertised on our website. So this is about improving urban engagement or improving engagement in general in nature with the public, and running lots of wildlife friendly events for various different groups. I mentioned previously parks, grasslands, and cemeteries. So that's looking at an overall review of our green spaces within urban areas and how we can improve those for biodiversity, what we have there and what we can do. A particular example of this recently is the Knoll Park and a massive change in the way that we manage the golf course there, which is now a big area of meadow with the nice Nollywood sign you may have seen in local press. And it's now classified as a sink. And then finally, green infrastructure, which is some of the stuff that I've been focusing on. And so I'm just going to go a little bit into green infrastructure now, as this is the only one that is a bit less, well, a bit fancier in terms of its aspects. But so we've got green infrastructure, and very simply, and this isn't an exhaustive list, some of the things that we've been looking at are green roofs, which is effectively as it says on the tin, looking at retrofitting some of our existing roofs to be green, providing green roofs on smaller structures, things like that, such as bus stops, bike shelters, green walls, which can be really fancy and very, like self-watering, maintain themselves, look after themselves, and make the wall look entirely green, to very simply trellises and climbing plants. Sustainable urban drainage, which I've mentioned, retrofitting roads and grey spaces and adding sustainable drainage using nature-based solutions to slow the flow of water. And then finally, greater green, which is, as I previously mentioned, looking at our existing sites and how we can remanage them and improve them for nature, but also for the increased well-being, climate resilience, and things like that in urban communities. So we're just going to run through a couple of examples of some of the things we've done before we'll let you go on to questions. So the one that I've got is the green infrastructure in Neath Port Talbot. And this is just a couple of examples of what we've done. So you can see on the top left, this is a green wall screening the M4 in Port Talbot so that people can see a more natural space, as well as a meadow in front of that. In the middle, we've got a meadow in Tybar Community Centre. On the bottom, we've got one of those green walls I mentioned with a mural. And on the top right, we've got some nature-based murals engaging with the local communities under the M4. And then finally, on the bottom right, a green roof bus stop in Aberavon Seafront. So I'll hand you back to Rose to go through some of the examples that the biodiversity team has been working on as well. Oh, no, I won't. Sorry, I forgot I have this slide. When I talked about increased connectivity, I just wanted to give an example. So this is an increased connectivity through some simple green roofs. So we've been trying to add green roofs to some of the amenities that we've been adding throughout communities. So on the top left, you've got actually what is a bin storage shelter in the Knoll in Neath. They need a new bin storage, and we just tried to do it with a green roof. And you can see here, this is the early stages of the green roof. In the middle and on the right, we've got two green roof bike shelters. So adding space for bike storage, which is needed in the community, but doing it with nature-based solutions in mind. These shelters come pre-made with these kind of additional habitat features of bug hotels and things like that in them. And then on the bottom, we've got the retrofit of an existing shelter in Aberavon, and just replacing the roof that was there, which was damaged, with a green roof, which you can see being planted on the left. And so this is just about increasing the connectivity and providing spaces for pollinators and habitat space where they would not conventionally be thought of. So I'll pass you back to Rose now, actually, for the last couple of slides.
Yeah, so one of the other ways then that we encourage sort of action in the urban environment is through our MPT for Nature, which is sort of the more community-based arm of the local nature partnership, which can be quite policy-based and a little bit dry for people that are just wanting to do a bit of nature on the side. So we do, through MPT for Nature, we do training and engagement. So that bottom right picture there is one of the walks we've done recently, which is an invertebrate walk at Tygyrian Community Meadow, which is in the middle of Bryn Coch. And then we have a grant fund as well that we run through Local Places for Nature. The LMP runs it and the steering group assess the applications, but through that we've got some really nice projects. So the top left is a green wall on a container in YMCA in Neath, and they've since had a lovely mural on the side of the building of some local nature species. They've had swift boxes installed. They've got interpretation telling people what birds they might see in the area, and then engagement tools like binoculars and things as well. So that was a really nice little project. In the middle there, that's the Children and Young People Services, one of their buildings. So they've just jazzed up their garden a little bit. They've done this nice mural. It's in Sandfield, so they've done a mural of the coastal species you can get in the MPT, and then planters with pollinator species. On the top right is Skewen Cricket Club, who they installed a big line of native hedging, bird boxes, pollinator planting, various things like that. So that's all funded through this small grant pot. So that's a really nice way of engaging the community with urban nature action. And we're able to guide action as well to make sure it's the most appropriate for the area. And I forgot to mention at the bottom there's another Empathy for Nature engagement event, which is Batfest, which is coming up again now in August in Margam Country Park. So yeah, just a nice way of getting education and getting people involved in nature, 'cause obviously that leads to more community action. On Swifts, we have a dedicated project, which is mainly down to Josella, who's in the pictures here, who is passionate about Swifts. She's one of our biodiversity officers. So she is doing an amazing job of driving action for Swifts in the county. And that's from installing nest boxes on our own on council buildings. She's also done a project working with the Housing Association, Titarian, to get nest boxes on their buildings, all funded by Local Places for Nature as well. Um, she's working on putting up a Swift Tower at the moment, which will be amazing. We've already got one up in Glantowie Riverside Park in Pontardawe, but we're going to have another one hopefully in Neath. Um, and then she's done a lot of engagement as well. So there's Swift Walks in Pontardawe. There's one tonight as well, which will be nice. And there's a display at our Nature and Earth event down at the bottom there. So yeah, she's getting a lot of good action for Swifts in the county. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention MPTB Friendly, which is our is our wildflower grassland scheme that we do internally as a council. So this is where we've identified sites that are suitable across the county. I think we've got something like 30 hectares or something on roadside verges and on street care owned land. There's more beyond that on local nature reserves and things, but just on the roadside verges and on slightly bigger patches, like in parks and things. That's what we've managed to get, which has been lovely. The picture in the middle is, I mean, I don't like to mention it too much, but COVID did help us out a little bit with this because that particular verge is right in the middle of a housing estate in Longford in Neath. And when they stopped mowing as much during COVID, when they could only go out one in a van, this is just what popped up. We just stopped mowing for a couple of weeks, and this verge had about 100 to 200 Southern Marsh orchids on it. Nothing had been done to that. All they did was stop mowing it. And that kind of thing was like really good for helping us move the scheme along and get people to understand it. So we do lots of interpretation around how we manage the grasslands. So you can see the cut and collect machine there in the top left picture. And then we do things like in the top right picture, nice edge cuts to show that it's a deliberate scheme. We're not just doing it because the council's being lazy or trying to save funds. It's a deliberate scheme. And I should mention as well, the actions within, these were just a few of the actions that we have for urban. They're under review all the time. So we've got a new set of actions coming out soon. And urban will have some tweaks to it. We've got added some like urban tree cover, for example. So yeah, so any thoughts as well on things that we might be missing, on any gaps in our delivery through the Nature Recovery Action Plan? Be interesting to hear your thoughts as well. I think that's it from my thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep,
So that's
that's us.
the web link for the Local Nature Partnership website if you wanted to go and have a look at our Nature Recovery Action Plan in full.
Thanks very much. I will stop sharing.
Wow. There's there's a lot going on, and if I may say, that's extremely impressive. So while we're waiting for people to raise their to raise their hands with their questions, um, one from me, we've been putting Swift boxes on some of Natural Resources Wales offices, and we've had mixed take up. How are you finding it with Swifts colonizing the boxes that you've been putting up?
We haven't had it because it's quite recent. Nothing's gone into them as yet. But she's where we can, we're putting in the callers as well to try and attract them in.
Mhm,
They have been prospecting and looking at the Swift Tower, so we're hopeful that they might move into that. But yeah, there's enough boxes going up across the county now that we're hopeful
mhm.
someone's going to find one soon and start using them. Um, so yeah, I'll keep you up to date.
Brilliant. And yeah, linking this back to planning and the fact that in Wales we have to make nature better on development sites. We can't just do like they do in England and buy biodiversity credits for planting a tree up in the upland somewhere. Um, have you got any policies in the local development plan for example, putting swift bricks into new developments?
Laura's here as well, so she's our planning ecologist, so she can jump in. But we don't, but we do work with um, planning with developers to like establish what's best for the particular development. So I don't know if you want to come in, Laura, but we
Yeah,
have
we don't have specific policies because I was asked about this yesterday actually because we just implement Plan Policy Wales and it's so
Mhm.
strong now that we can just hang everything off that and just say you need integrated bird boxes, do it.
I
Yeah,
mean,
so
we have managed to do it through, if it's internal, we'll work with the specific team. So
yeah.
with our regen teams, they've just redeveloped a building and they put a living wall on it, and we did get some Swift bricks into that as well and a caller. Um, but the other thing, which I should have mentioned, that we're doing is working with more developers on their social value
Mhm,
policy as well. So ones that are, specifically working as contractors for the council,
mhm,
they obviously have a requirement to do, once it's a certain amount of money, they have a requirement to do social value. So we have been meeting up with them to sort of suggest some of the things like this, like Swift boxes and Swift bricks are just easy wins for a developer, aren't they? They're not,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of millions of multi-million dollar development, a couple of £100 on a few Swift boxes, is a no-brainer, really.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And we've got a couple of people from housing associate, registered social landlords here, um, who hopefully will be picking up on some of these points for their future
Yeah,
developments.
well, like I say, Titarian, which is our local one, they've done the Swift project with us, but I'm in Bridgend, and I was walking past, nearby in my neighbourhood the other day, and I heard all these Swifts swooping over my head, and then I noticed there was a couple of Swift boxes on the social housing there, which is I think it's Valleys to Coast, and they were
Mhm.
actually using those boxes. So I've got footage of that, which I did send to them and say, congratulations on putting Swift boxes in. Thank you very much.
Fan-
So yeah,
Fantastic. Well, I'll feed back to Steve Curry, who used to work for Valleys to Coast. So that's probably one of his. Um,
yeah. We have also worked with the housing associations on. We got them some local places for nature funding for cut and collect machinery as well, so they can do their grassland management. So yeah, so there's lots of partnership opportunities as well.
Fantastic. And again, while we're waiting for other people to put their virtual hands up, um, with the cut and collect, how's
Mm.
that going? How are you coping with things like, for example, waste transfer licenses, contamination with plastics, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so to make it it's going really well, but we've basically made it as simple as possible. So we don't take anything off site.
Hmm.
Um, so it just gets collected and put in a habitat pile on the
Hmm.
site, which means we obviously we've got a working group with street care
Hmm.
that we meet once a month, and we have been now since 2020.
Hmm.
So we've got a really good working relationship, and that was straight away ruled out that we would never be able to, well, it's never say never, but it wasn't practical to be taking arisings off site just for the capacity of the guys on the ground,
Hmm.
and then obviously the money required to pay to dispose of it, which I think that would be we have looked into it, and I don't think it would be something we could get mates rates for, even
Hmm.
though we're internal. Um, and then the actual cost of running the vehicles back and forth, and some of these sites are quite big as well, so it's just not practical to take it off. It's not something, it's something that we might need to use on some sites in the future, but we've not been able to make that work practically yet.
We
But yeah,
we
we
did
kept
have
it
a
simple.
webinar on using arisings from cut and collect for producing
Mm,
biogas. So I'm
yeah,
hoping that's something that we can pursue on a Wales-wide basis at some
it
point
would
in the
be
future.
brilliant. It would be brilliant, but it would be difficult to get over the capacity issue, I think, of at the moment we're sort of at capacity with how many sites we can manage because they all get cut and collected around the same time, to try and get in there before it gets too wet to cut lots of the sites because we're quite a soggy county.
Well, I'm
With
hoping that
soggy grasslands.
I'm hoping it'll pay us back, and
Mm,
that we'll be able to afford to fund things by
yeah,
creating biogas and
yeah.
generating
Well, that
energy.
would be great.
Anyway, I'm going to
If you're
shut
going to
up
do it
because
anywhere, it's going to be Neath Port Talbot. We've got
Mhm,
so many renewable energy projects going on that someone's
mhm,
bound to come forward soon. I've got to give all credit to Rose because we've been trying this for years, and it's usually been me driving into the office, phoning street care and going, "Why have you cut this? What's going on?" But because she's been able to dedicate her time to actually meeting with the operatives and going out and looking at things, and it's just amazing. Our wildflower verges are absolutely stunning at the moment. They are amazing. And that is all down to Rose, definitely.
wonderful. Well, before we finish this segment of the webinar, Jacinta has got a question. Jacinta, could you unmute yourself and turn your microphone on and ask your
Hello.
question?
Hi, brilliant presentation. I was so impressed. They're doing so much. Um, if you don't know who I am tree equity lead for the Woodland Trust.
Oh yeah.
And when you mentioned urban canopy cover, I was my ears pricked up
Mhm.
and thought maybe it would be useful to have a conversation. If you've heard of Tree Equity Score, you may have already, but I don't know if it's informing your work yet. And sort of also just learn a little bit more about your canopy cover targets in urban areas. That would be really useful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Like as Rose said, we're looking at adding it to the local NRAP actions for urban spaces. Like we're a very wooded authority. I think we have over 40% of like canopy cover, but we're where we're severely lacking really is in street trees, and we also have a lot of aging street trees that are potentially we're going to lose in the future that were planted in a very long time ago. So we're looking at making sure that we maintain that stock, but also add to it a really bad urban heat island effect in spaces like Neath Town Centre, Port Talbot Town Centre, and we're looking at taking action for tree planting to improve that. We have done a lot of tree planting within the green infrastructure projects that we've been running, specifically in Port Talbot, in Sandfields and Aberavon, but we're looking to do more. So it'd be great. It would be great to have a meeting with you, just to talk about it.
Also, I
Yeah.
just wanted to add in about the Urban Long Forest Project. Neath Port Talbot is one of the regions. Have you heard of that?
Yes,
And
yeah.
spoken to Morgan. Brilliant.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
because
on the
that's just
stakeholder.
started, isn't it? Sorry,
Yeah,
Rose.
I'm on the stakeholder group, and we've got
Oh, awesome. Oh, we're going to
I
see each
think
other
there's a
next week
meeting
then.
about it next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
great.
We're going to that. So
Excellent. And we'll catch each other again then. And yeah, we'd love to talk more about it. Okay, fabulous. Thank you for your time.
Well, that's great. Well, another link made. Lucy's got a hand up. Lucy, could I ask you to unmute and turn on your camera and ask you a question?
Hi, thanks everyone. Thanks for the lovely presentation. I'm an environmental anthropologist and I'm working in Swansea on a research project. And what actually with Penny, who's just got her hand up, we're actually on the same project. What I wanted to know, so I'm not a biodiversity expert. I'm thinking about people's relationships with the environment. That's where my work centers. So what I was wondering is how much of the work that you do thinks about connecting up the green spaces across the regions that you're responsible for so that they form like a joined pattern rather than separated spots of greenness in various places. And I'm asking that because I feel that a lot of people sort of stick to the kind of the areas that they know about, and they don't wander through and link up all the green areas. So quite a few people in Swansea don't recognize that there are lots of really amazing green spaces that are being created. And so what I'm wondering is, how much thought goes into finding ways to connect them, to almost create sort of human biodiversity corridors for people to kind of move through and get a sense of how things are changing. And if any thought goes into that at all, probably does.
Well, I don't know if anyone else wants to come in on this,
We
but
did the Stepping Stones project. Weirdly, thanks to COVID, people threw a load of money at us and went, make green spaces accessible for people. So what we've done is the Stepping Stones project is basically taking old, for example, playgrounds that are not in use anymore, literally digging them up and filling them with wildflowers. So these are in communities, they're already established places that people know. And yeah, we've just sort of put in these little ones throughout the urban environment. And they've been unbelievably successful. They've been amazing. We don't know how people react to them. We
Mm,
haven't done any actual research on that part of it.
mm.
But we've put them in, they're there, they exist, and they are being used. Yeah.
Yeah. And do they connect these different spaces? Do they connect to each other? Like, are there pathways that say, right, you're in this one place, now you can go and visit that one too? Does that
no, and
happen? No.
that's a really interesting thing,
Yeah, we need to do
like
that.
way of thinking of it. No, because I think we have been limited with like where we can get this space to do
Hmm.
things,
Mm.
and whether it yeah, quite often it's just like that's the only place we can do it, so therefore let's do
Sure.
it
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And but it's really interesting to think of it as a human biodiversity corridor as well. I really like the thought of that.